Did Russia's premier electronic warfare system just fall into Ukrainian hands? Just how will this make life harder for Russia? And are they trying to pull out all the stops to get the technological edge over Ukraine? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is a really interesting story that Ukraine has captured Russia's advanced Volnorez electronic warfare system in what they're calling a raid in Kursk. For those of you that are newish to the channel, a raid is a military attack followed by a withdrawal, right? So you seize an objective temporarily, and before the enemy can bring reinforcements or counter battery fire or more military stuff to bear, you withdraw, going back to your original position. And this is a quintessential example of a raid in which Ukrainian forces captured a specific objective, in this case, a valuable piece of technology, and then brought the piece of tech back before Russia knew what was up. Right. This is specifically the Volnorez electronic warfare system. But not only did they capture the system itself, but they actually captured a bunch of documentation with it. They literally found a new in-box Volnorez, right? Like some kind of collector's item. Let's see if we can find it. There's actually some pictures of the documentation of the system. But the key thing to take away from this Volnorez is that it is essentially a Russian take on the U.S. military's Kursk and Dukes system. And you might remember in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Kursk and Dukes were broad spectrum frequency jammers that were targeted towards cell phones, right? Because Iraqi and Afghan insurgents would detonate their IEDs using cell phone signals. So by creating a big jamming bubble where those signals would never make it to the explosives, it kept U.S. soldiers safe, right? But obviously, this is a different war with a slightly different threat, but not that different. You could almost think of drones as an IED with wings. Horrific. Like, sort of, like imagine if someone gave a snake wings. That's kind of how you feel like. Snakes are bad, but man, if they could fly, it'd be even worse. And that's what it feels like, certainly on both sides of this conflict, right? Ukrainian soldiers, Russian soldiers, both subject to these brutal FPV drone attacks. And so Russia has essentially evolved their own version of the system. It mounts to the chassis of a tank, and it blocks a fairly broad range of frequencies, but the problem is that now that the Ukrainian forces have gotten their hands on the captured Volnorez system, right, they can reverse engineer it and fairly easily move the frequencies that their drones talk at away from the ranges that the Volnorez operates, forcing Russia to go back to the drawing board and manufacture a new system capable of jamming the updated frequencies, right? So it's part of the arms race, literally, in electronic warfare. Now, the Volnorez system is very effective, right? It can disrupt drones for up to half a mile, meaning that if you're an infantry formation and you have a tank near you providing this ability, and we used to do this in Afghanistan, we would literally have the Dukes and Kursk systems. We would try to set up vehicle patrol bases that were central to our planned patrol route so that we would have the maximum amount of coverage for our Dukes and Kursk systems. Again, Dukes, I think, were the old ones. We were always running Kursk systems. But that protective bubble, man, is so valuable. It really is tremendously, tremendously important when it comes to any kind of signal-based weapon system. But Russia is doing a lot more than just that. Now, one other detail I wanted to point out that I thought was pretty interesting is that purportedly this Volnorez system is primarily on T-80s. And actually over on combatvetnews.com, in yesterday's video, we got leaked footage of Ukrainian troops actually capturing a T-80 and bringing it back to Ukraine. And so I suspect that may have actually, maybe that had the Volnorez. I'm not proficient enough, and they didn't like focus on the T-80 long enough for me to really discern if that's what they had. But you could certainly see that capturing an intact T-80 was a big deal for those Ukrainian troops. So again, if you're interested, combatvetnews.com. It's my Patreon site, basically for members only. I'll throw the link in the description. Okay, here's the thing. Russia's not just using jamming tech, right? Because part of the arms race, an arms race is both improving your defensive capabilities, but also your offensive capabilities. And one of the things that Russia is researching a lot is optic control, right? Now, again, fiber optics, right, are something that has actually been in the U.S. arsenal, fiber optic guided weapons, for a long time. The TOW system, for example, is a wire guided weapon system in which it's a guided weapon, but it doesn't talk via radio signals or via electronic signals back to its control. Instead, it talks via physical wire, a very, very thin wire guides is used to like control the munition onto its target. It's kind of crazy. It's sort of like using a wired mouse, right? You've got your Bluetooth mouse, but the problem is with Bluetooth mouse, let's say you had a Bluetooth jammer, you could get the mouse to not work. And when you're talking about precision movements, like an FPV drone, even small disruptions can be a big deal. And so Russia says, well, we can just solve this by making the wired mouse. It's a little harder, right? It's kind of annoying to have a mouse wire on your desk. So you can imagine how much tougher it is to have a mouse wire, that stretches a kilometer or more. But they are still researching this. Russia trying to create a way to have a fiber optic cable jam-proof, preventing the drone. Not only will it be jam-proof if Russia can figure out how to do it and then do it at scale, but it will also stop the drone from being detected, because a lot of drones are detected using their electronic or radio signature, right? Because the drone is always talking to its control center. So again, it doesn't have to broadcast something to the control center. Instead, it can just communicate directly over the wire. Really, but here's the thing to remember with Russia. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about why I'm not that optimistic about Russia. But first, if you guys feel like you need your own secret weapon to get things done, particularly during back to school, not for your kids, but for you, I get it. Nobody thinks about parents, but it's really stressful, right? Or maybe you're just somebody that has to deal with traffic, right? There's all sorts of nonsense. Anyway, you should check out Strike Gum. Caffeine. This is the energy drink alternative. Superior in every way. You don't want to haul around an energy drink in your hand, right? Strike Gum has an entire energy drink's worth of caffeine in this one little piece of gum, plus 90 milligrams plus 100 milligrams of alpha GPC, and no sugar, right? So no sugar crash, just pure, great energy to get you through the day. And because it's back to school, because I get it, you guys need it, we are doing a sale. That's right. If you buy 2 or more of these 5-packs, free shipping using code StrikeBTS. So just go to strikegum.com, add 2 or more of these 5-packs to your cart, Strike BTS, we'll ship it to you for free. That's a pretty good deal. That means it's literally cheaper to get 15 packs than it is to get the tray, right? After shipping. So link is in the description. Promo code's in the description. Go check it out if you haven't already. If you were thinking about ordering it, dude, now's the time. We don't do these sales that often. Okay, here's why I'm such a skeptic about Russia's ability to do this. One, fiber optic stuff, high-end electronics, those are some of the most heavily sanctioned equipment in this Russian sanctions regime that the West has run. And you guys know that this is a key example of dual-use equipment, right? Fiber optics are important for high-speed internet networks and other stuff. So it wouldn't initially on the surface look like a big problem if Russia were to start importing a lot of fiber optics. But it's a classic example of what's called dual-use technology. We don't know, no one knows if the fiber optic cables are going to power a new generation of Russian attack drones, or if they're going to make sure Russian consumers can, play Escape from Tarkov or be toxic on your favorite video game, right? You don't know. So But the West has said, listen, here's some of these items. They're too important. They're too militarily essential. We're declaring them military gear, regardless of the fact that they have other possible uses. And that has been the subject of a lot of controversy and sanction among Chinese firms where Russia buys most of this stuff. But overall, it's very hard for Russia to manufacture new widgets of any kind. Especially the more technological it is, the harder it is, right? A lot of even the new artillery shells that Russia manufactures are not really new. They're remanufactured Soviet shells that are sort of refurbished and restored. In fact, a lot of Russia's arsenal is just Soviet equipment that they're sprucing up, right? T-80, that means that tank was designed in 1980. Under the Soviet Union, right? So you could see that for Russia, new advanced tech, they don't have a hard time designing it, right? They're still an industrial European country. They have a hard time scaling its manufacture, right? And that's why we're seeing it's easier for Russia to refurbish a T-62 tank than it is to build a new T-90, which is crazy. Imagine if the U.S. military was like, it's not worth it to build any new combat vehicles. Instead, it's worth it for us to refurbish like Shermans. That's what we're talking about these guys doing, which is insane. Insane for an industrial country. But that's a sign of the kind of investment Russia's made in its industrial base. Here's an example. The Pantsir is a Russian air defense system that was designed. It was considered out of date compared to Western air defenses in the 1980s. And at a closed Russian army technical forum, Russia's MOD admitted that the Pantsir system was just not cutting it, right? The Pantsir, they rolled out a new version called the Pantsir SMDE. And they noticed that it does less than the other Pantsir, sort of. What it does is they removed the autocannons. 30-millimeter autocannons used radar to sort of traject and track incoming aircraft. But in this case, those aircraft are small drones. Those 30-millimeter autocannons just cannot take out these drones. They're just a waste of bullets. And so instead, they've built a system that is missiles only, right? And while the Pantsir SMDE is still being promoted as an anti-drone system, it now has, instead of those autocannons, 48 tiny little missiles that supposedly can hit targets within 0.5 kilometer, 7 kilometers, and altitudes up to 5 kilometers, right? Of course, the Pantsir traditionally reaches out to 20 kilometers and altitudes up to 15. So it's clearly an aircraft system that they're trying to sort of repurpose. And this is, I think, a classic example of Russian sort of efforts, right? Instead of sitting there and being like, we're going to go back to the drawing board, we're going to build something new, they're saying, well, why don't we just, we do have to take this out-of-date system and kind of finagle it to kind of sort of be a solution to modern battlefield issue. And the strange thing is, right, autocannons themselves are not ineffective against drones. Germany has donated a bunch of their old Gepard anti-aircraft systems, and they smoke drones. Drones are great for autocannons because they're slow moving relative to like a supersonic fighter jet, and they operate at a relatively low altitude, meaning that the ammunition can really get them. And because the Gepard has pretty accurate radar and a pretty accurate trajectory calculation, it actually doesn't burn that much ammo in taking out these drones. Just puts a couple dozen rounds into them, and that's it, right? That's a really efficient weapon system. And it was developed in the 70s and still outperforms Russia's contemporary systems. So that, to me, is emblematic of how Russia deals with this sort of thing. Anyway, guys, be sure to hit subscribe. That really helps my channel, and it tells the YouTube algorithm that I'm one of the legitimate content creators putting out real good information for you guys. A huge thank you to our Colonel tier members, particularly Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Giles Maroning, Eugenia Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, Fran Zacharias, and AN90, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. I appreciate you so much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.